Since the dawn of time, humanity has been haunted by one question. Can you farm 10 million eggs in 100 Minecraft days? Well, let's just say the odds aren't exactly in my favor. Oh, my game's gonna break. But we'll handle those problems when we get to them. Before we get started though, let me just change into the proper suit. And now I just need the perfect seed. No. Okay, I think this one has potential. There's a village close to the spawn, and the area around it is pretty flat. With the seed found, I harvested my first house, stole a bed, and made a pickaxe so I could harvest more of the house and make a stone axe, which meant I could begin working on my day one goals, which was going to be moving all of the villagers into one big building. And now you might be wondering, if your goal here is to collect 10 million eggs in 100 days, why are you messing with villagers right now? Shouldn't you be looking for chickens? Wouldn't you need to have 100,000 eggs on the first day to be on track? No. The thing about challenges like these is that they're all about exponential growth. I know, he said a math word, but this is the formula for exponential growth. This is a chicken. We'll call him Popcorn. Popcorn lays an average of 8 eggs every hour. Coincidentally, it also takes an average of 8 thrown eggs to hatch a baby chicken. So every hour, our chickens will produce enough eggs to effectively double themselves. And this is what that looks like on a graph. That's billions of chickens by day 100, and we only need a few 100,000. Meaning I don't really have to worry about rushing to get chickens in these early stages. Focusing on villager trades so that I can get geared up is going to be a much better use of my time. By the first night, things were already off to a good start. I'd managed to bring all of the villagers together safely, and after repurposing the wood from their houses to finish up the roof, I repurposed their food supply as well. In the morning, I killed off their freshly spawned iron golem. And speaking of iron, did I mention that I'm going to need 60,000 of it? Yeah, turns out the most difficult part about this challenge is going to be building a big enough storage system. Unlike most items, eggs only stack to 16, so we're going to need around 12,000 double chests to hold 10 million of them. Each one will also need its own hopper, and that's where all the iron comes from. So those little iron farms everyone builds, I'm going to need like 20 of them. And this is why I was focusing on villagers so early. The faster I could breed them, the sooner I'd have those iron farms up and running. I already had a few baby villagers, but thanks to some weirdo in a chicken costume, the villagers are now completely out of beds and food. So it was time to start working on a source of emeralds. That source was going to be stick trades, hence the spruce saplings. I grabbed some gravel from a nearby river and turned it into flint for the fletching tables. Then, while the villagers were asleep, I chopped down my first giant spruce tree, giving me the sticks I would need for my first few emeralds. Emeralds that I immediately gave back to the villagers to level up the toolsmith. Trading for a better axe would allow me to chop trees faster, but in order to get those diamond tool trades, I was going to need iron. Luckily, the villagers were pretty consistently giving me new iron golems to sacrifice, and in the meantime, I kept myself busy chopping trees. These tools I was after weren't just important for getting early game emeralds, I was also going to use them in every stage of this video. From building the iron farms, to collecting all the wood for the chests, and even trying not to die. Between iron golem kills, I worked on trading with a shepherd. If I could get him to like me, I'd have a long-term solution for my lack of beds. But wouldn't it be easier to find some sheep and use their wool to craft the beds? These are the kind of questions that keep me up shearing sheep all night. But really, I was going to need 60 beds for the iron farms alone, and those 10 were only going to buy me a little time. Time I used to craft up a couple lecterns and start refreshing librarian trades. Without Efficiency 5 books, this video wasn't going to be possible, so I had to start working on that as well. After leveling up the shepherd one more time, my nights of sneaking out with the sheep were over. I could now trade for everything I needed to keep the villagers busy. Following my routine tree chopping and golem slaying on day 4, I was able to level up my toolsmith and gain my first diamond tools. Not exactly what I was going for, but at least it would be a cheaper way to level them up further. And if you haven't noticed yet, this is my first video that I'm not playing on hardcore difficulty. Is it because I'm too scared of dying and losing all of my progress?
No. Oh, don't cry.
I just think for a challenge like this, it makes sense to be able to respawn, because this video really isn't about me. It's about farming 10 million eggs in 100 days, and if necessary, it's a cause I'm willing to die for. That night and into the next morning, I chopped some more trees, and tried burning down one of the village houses in the rain to make room for my future chicken coop. By then, I'd forever sleeped enough golems to level the toolsmith again, unlocking a diamond axe trade. And by selling all the sticks I had farmed the night before, I was able to fill in the last row of beds, get some bread to keep the villagers fed, and of course buy a diamond axe. The axe was cool, but it really needed efficiency 5 before I'd be satisfied. So it made sense to do as much trade refreshing as I could during the day, and work on other stuff during the night, like chopping more wood or starting forest fires. It might not be the most applauded act, but listen, I needed some space for those iron farms, and I don't have time for morals. Finally maxing out the toolsmith, I could now buy diamond pickaxes, and I spent the next 5 minutes refreshing librarian trades to no avail. That night, I killed my first slime, and worked on spawn-proofing as much of the area as possible. I might not be treating the villagers with the most respect here, but I did need them alive. With the population of my villagers increasing so quickly, it was time to start prepping the iron farms. This square I'm digging out will eventually be the holes that the iron golems spawn in, but for now I'm going to fill it with the beds and use it to house more villagers. Once they were asleep, I used some spare beds to move them over to the farm, and after the second batch, I had all 12 in there. Then I could replace the beds in the main building and keep breeding more. Using a lava pool I found on top of the mountain behind the village, I made another portal with my bucket and went through, practically spawning on top of a bastion. I don't think I need to explain why this was a bad idea, but I needed soul sand for the iron farms and it definitely wasn't going to come to me. Luckily, there were no enemies waiting for me in the Soul Sand Valley, and I collected about a stack and a half before heading home. Or trying to. With my current loadout, those little piggies were a big problem, so instead of getting myself killed, I did the old bait and switch, opening up a path for me to run safely through the middle and escape through the portal. Now that I had separated the villagers into 2 groups, there were twice as many golems donating themselves to the cause, giving me the iron I needed to level up a second toolsmith. So I now had access to every diamond tool in the game. I saved up enough emeralds to buy a shovel, and this was going to make digging out the iron farms much easier. I'll leave a link to the design I'm using in the description, but it basically just combines 4 of those small iron farms into one, producing around 1,000 ingots per hour. To get to the 60,000 iron I'm going to need in time, I'm going to need to build 5 of them. I'll try to go through this part quick though, because the real fun starts with these little guys. By the end of day 9, I was ready to move the villagers into their cells, and shortly after, the zombies too. And 0 thanks to the iron golem's help, I was able to get all 4 of them in by sunrise. What this meant is that we officially had 1 iron farm working. Eventually, I'd need to dig out the drop chute if I wanted those 1,000 per hour rates, but for now I just needed some to trade with. I still wasn't having any luck with that efficiency 5 trade, but at least I was able to use the iron I was getting to make 2 pairs of pants. And the rest of the set as well. To keep golems from spawning around the trading hall, I tried trapping 2 of them right next to it. This would stop new ones from spawning and messing up the rates of our actual iron farms. Day 11, I learned that moving the villagers during the day was probably not the smartest idea. But I used the brewing stands I got from the village's churches, as well as a loom to lure 3 of them into the next iron farm. And maybe in exchange for fresh air, the librarians would finally cooperate. I did get a silk touch trade, which I bought just in case I needed to collect ice. And then I found it. Kind of. It was only efficiency 4, but it was cheap, and I couldn't afford to waste any more time with the refreshes, so I locked it in. With that weight finally off my shoulders, I could finally focus my full attention on completing the remaining iron farms. Day 14, the day had finally come to start working on the chicken coop. This build would eventually hold hundreds of thousands of chickens, which seems impossible now, but I'll explain how once we get there. This design is something I came up with in creative mode. Basically, the top section has a layer of water floating on signs. The chickens will swim on top of that water, and any eggs they lay will fall through to this bottom section and be pushed into a hole in the middle. And here we are, 16 days into this challenge, and I'm just now getting my first pair of chickens. And also my first egg. I used some seeds to get a third chicken, found a fourth that was trying to hide from me on the cliffside, and aside from throwing their eggs at the wall and feeding them seeds every 5 minutes, that was really all I needed to do with them for now. That night, I actually got 4 baby chickens from 1 egg, which, if you don't know, has a super low chance of happening. Unfortunately, I couldn't just hatch more villagers, so the grind continued. But I think you guys have seen enough of these iron farms already. Just dig out all the cells during the day, and gently drop the villagers into them at night. There was also the process of spawn-proofing all the underwater caves with slabs, but we don't really have to talk about that, because it hurt. A lot, actually. Instead, I'm just going to go through day by day and mention everything important that happened from day 18 to 26. Day 18, I finished spawn-proofing that huge underwater cave that I said I wasn't going to talk about. Also, I fed the chickens, threw their eggs at the wall, and descended from eating peasant food. Day 19, I added a hopper under the chicken coop. The more eggs I could collect, the more I could throw at the wall. Day 20, I built more villager cells, and placed more slabs on the surface where I didn't want golems to spawn. Day 21, I finished the last of the villager cells, and that night, dropped as many as I could into their new homes. Day 22, I had a full hopper of eggs, which meant there was a good chance my arm was going to be sore that night. This day was also cool because I finally got to work on the drop chute and the collection system. And I also finished moving in the last of the villagers. Day 23, I realized I had built some of the villager cells 1 block too close to the farm, so I had to slide them over a block. But all was not grim, for I was able to finish 2 more drop chutes before the morning. Day 24, my pickaxe wasn't feeling up to mining the last of the chutes, so I shifted my focus to melting all of the extra iron golems instead. What this meant is that I could finally start getting some of the zombies into place, so that became my main focus throughout the night. Day 25, I made myself a replacement pickaxe, finished another chute, and by day 26, I had finally finished the last one. And now we can move on to more interesting things, like melting golems. Obviously, they weren't supposed to be spawning up here anymore, but I was having a difficult time figuring out where exactly I still needed a spawn proof. On a more positive note, I did have a wandering trader spawn in, but he took a tumble into the iron farm. So, at this point, the only thing the iron farms are missing is an actual collection system, so I added those in. I also added a chest to the egg hopper, something I probably should have done a long time ago, but the chickens were coming along quite nicely already, so I wasn't too worried. Okay, my main focus now is actually just cleaning things up. We still have little weird spots where golems can spawn, so my goal is to find all of those and make it so they can't spawn. Something I also worked on was fully lighting up the area. Before, I needed to keep some of the areas dark so that I could get the zombies I needed, but that wasn't a problem anymore. So I spent the night placing torches. And there it was, 28 days of work to get all 5 iron farms up and running. We were now on track to have all 60,000 iron ingots by day 64. The next goal was going to be automating the egg hatching process. As much fun as it was throwing eggs, my attention was soon going to be needed elsewhere. So I went to the nether to mine some quartz, returning home once I had about a stack. Using my new clerics, I could now buy redstone, and this would allow me to craft up all of the components I would need to build the auto hatchers. And by auto hatchers, I really just mean a bunch of dispensers to throw out eggs for me. So the first thing we need is a water stream that takes all of the eggs into the corner of the chicken coop, and then a water elevator to bring them up to the top. The dispensers are going to be spaced out 2 blocks apart with 5 on each side of the coop, and then our water stream is going to run behind all of them and feed the hoppers. For the last part of the puzzle, we have an observer on top of the dispensers, and then I just went ahead and replicated that on all 4 sides. There wasn't really anywhere around me that I could get ice from, and I didn't have the time to go looking for it, so I came up with this design for the corners, which kind of just throws the items into a bubble column. For now, any eggs that do a full loop will just get tossed back into the main water elevator and continue to do laps until they're picked up or disappear. And to power the dispensers, while simultaneously creating a noise machine that makes my head hurt, we just need a second row of observers facing into the first. So after filling in the main bubble column with source blocks, the auto hatchery was officially up and running. Except now our chickens were just being pelted with their own eggs. So with our chicken and iron production now fully automated by day 31, you might be wondering what exactly I'm going to be doing in the meantime. You see those things behind me? Those are trees. When I break them down with my axe, they give me wood. This one took me a minute to chop down and ended up giving me a stack and a half of logs, which means I only have 1,124 stacks left to go. Yeah, this is why those efficiency 5 axes are so important. A very valid question you might be asking is, why don't you just build a wood farm? And honestly, I would want nothing more than to build a wood farm and be done with it. But I've done a lot of research and calculations for this challenge. For example, the fastest I can possibly break wood is about 2.5 blocks a second. It would take me 8 hours to get to 72,000 at that rate. When you add in the extra time for planting saplings, buying new axes, checking on the chickens, fixing golem spawns, and all the other little things that make me less efficient than a robot, we're looking at 10 hours minimum, or 30 Minecraft days. Now, say I instead decided to build this farm by Shulkercraft that produces 20,000 logs per hour. At first glance, that sounds great. 4 hours of AFKing and all of the wood is mine. Except that doesn't take into consideration the 2 hours it would take to gather the materials and actually build the farm. 6 hours isn't that bad, but what about the 15,000 bone meal you need to run the farm? Okay, now I need a minimum of 2 bone meal farms, so add another 2 hours to build those, and now we're at the 8-hour mark already, not including checking on the chickens, fixing golem spawns, and again, me not being a robot. All of that rambling on about wood leaves us on day 39. Based on the F3 menu here, we've got over 900 chickens in the coop so far, and this is something we're going to need to continue to pay attention to while chopping trees, because the game can only handle so many entities before it starts to break. Now, I think it's safe to say I'm no stranger at grinding out tedious tasks for a Minecraft project, but the 13 hours straight of chopping down trees definitely drove me insane in this one. For now though, we have bigger issues than my own well-being. Problem number 1, which is probably pretty obvious, is that this chicken coop is completely full. So much so that our chickens are dying from entity cramming. Problem number 2 is that the server TPS is dropping below 20, or in simpler terms, the server is starting to lag, which you can kinda see with how delayed it is when I pick up items. What that means is that we'd be lucky to get to 3,000 chickens before the game becomes unplayable. Right now we're at just over 2,000, and having a better computer wouldn't solve this. I'm still getting 70 frames per second. In fact, even in a single player world, we'd still be having this same exact problem. The truth is, Minecraft just isn't a very optimized game, and what we're doing is definitely pushing it to its absolute limits. So if we're talking about just regular vanilla Minecraft, the answer to can we farm 10 million eggs in 100 days is no. Actually, you wouldn't even be able to hit 1 million. The game simply can't handle it. But this is my video, and my challenge, so we're not just limited to the confines of the game itself. Popcorn told me so. Introducing the Rose Stacker plugin. Those of you who have played on Skyblock servers might be familiar with mob stacking, but for those who haven't, it's quite simple. If 2 or more chickens are close enough, they'll stack together. When a stack of chickens lays an egg, the drops are multiplied by the stack size. The maximum stack size I'm going to be using is 1,000, so instead of the measly 2,000 chickens we were limited to before, now we'll be able to have up to 2 million. So now that our chickens are condensed and the game is playable again, for now, I should probably empty out the raw chicken that's flooding the system. And then I just went off to cut more trees until something exciting happened. Oh no. No, no, no. Yeah, with my 6 arrows, a group of witches was not really something I wanted to fight head on. Luckily, I remembered that I still had those iron golems buried outside. The situation itself was really stressful though, because I still didn't know which villagers got converted. If my efficiency librarian was gone, it could honestly ruin the entire run. One by one, I picked off the witches, and with the help of the other golem, the coast was clear. It was still difficult to tell which of the villagers had been converted, but it seemed like most of the important ones were still alive. It was a huge scare, but it taught me a valuable lesson. Always have some friends buried nearby in case you need them. So now that the lightning rods were in place, and my chest pain was starting to go away, I happily returned to chopping trees. Day 49, a wandering trader appeared, but I wasn't exactly in the need of buckets of fish, so I kept chopping. And for the next 16 days, all I did was chop more wood. The iron farms were filling up, the chickens were multiplying, and I kept chopping. Day 67, I finally got a good trade from a wandering trader in the form of blue ice. I wasn't sure if I'd end up using it, but it could be really helpful for the water streams, so I bought it all, which was only 6. Speaking of water streams, ours were now completely overflowing with more eggs than the dispensers could handle. And this was really starting to tank my FPS. So I built a lava pit to start burning the extra. As much as I would have liked to keep them, I didn't have the time to manually load them into chests. The main storage system had to be my #1 priority. Dear Diary, it's day 74, and I've finally done it. 10.5 double chests worth of chests. Please, send help. It wasn't exactly easy to tell how many chickens I had anymore, but it looked like a lot, and my army was only going to keep growing. Now that I had the chests, I could finally start building the storage system. The first step to that is building a massive rectangle, and then a layer of slabs around the outside. And what this will allow us to do is create the world's largest kiddie pool. It'll all make sense in a minute. But for now, I needed to get all the materials moved up to the platform. So I made a little area on the side to store everything. To craft up to 12,000 hoppers, I used the help of a mod called Item Scroller to save myself some time. Once I had all the materials moved up, I could finally get to work. The storage system is going to have 12 rows of chests. Each row is going to be 50 blocks long, as well as 20 blocks tall. The water is there to keep mobs from spawning, and it will also help me avoid taking fall damage. One problem that I needed to solve though was how long it would take to place the chests. If I went along placing all 24,000 like this, I would never finish in time. Placing them vertically was definitely an improvement, but by using the mod Tweakaroo, you can actually place chests down like they're normal blocks. And while I place the first few layers, I just want to explain why we're almost at day 80 and I don't have a single egg collected yet. Basically, the reason why this could actually work is because the storage system is going to be 600 hoppers long. Each hopper can handle 9,000 eggs in an hour, meaning we could store 5.4 million items per hour. So as long as we have enough chickens to produce that many, we can collect all 10 million eggs in less than 6 in-game days. As I was placing in these hoppers though, I noticed that my game was getting extremely laggy. At first, I was just laughing it off, thinking that it might be a combo of the rain and the storage system causing it. But by the time I noticed the hole in the water elevator, it was already too late. An Enderman must have picked up that missing dirt block, and now all of the eggs were getting stuck. In the little time I had to react, I tried grabbing a block of dirt from the chest to fix the hole. But even if I would have been able to place it down at this point, the damage had already been done. So after whiffing with the dirt block and realizing there was nothing that I could do, I did the only thing I could do and shut down the server. And then I just sat there for a while. Part of me still in disbelief that an Enderman might have just ended my run, and the other part trying to figure out how I was going to fix this mess. But then it came to me. Loading back into the server, the game was literally just a slideshow at this point. I was getting about half a frame per second. but if I could just paste the command in and remove that extra slash, everything would go back to normal. After patching up the source of the problem, the eggs were no longer getting stuck, and I could continue on building the storage system. However, I now had a few questions lingering in my mind. Would it be just as laggy once the eggs were filling up the storage system? Could the game even handle 12,000 hoppers running at the same time? Why did I not think to test that before attempting this challenge in the first place? But the only thing I could do now was keep going. On day 79, I decided to stop hatching more chickens. Based on my calculations, we had more than enough, and with all the chests I was placing, I didn't need any extra lag. I've never been more excited to hear the sound of nothing. For the next 3 hours, I did nothing but place chests and hoppers, and I can't blame the lag on an Enderman this time. My PC was starting to struggle. And the drop in frames definitely wasn't making it any easier to place all these blocks down. I finally finished the chests and hoppers on day 87, and the only thing I still needed to do before unleashing the eggs was build the water streams. For the borders, I used slabs on each side of the hoppers. One quick tip here for any time you need to place down a lot of water: instead of making multiple trips to an infinite water source, just create that infinite water source as you're placing down the water and leave one of the edges. For the turns, I used the same bubble column trick as I explained earlier with the chicken coop, and in just 20 minutes, all of them were in place. At the very end of the hoppers, I dug straight down and made a fire so that any extra eggs would burn. And then the final step was to get the eggs up there. For that, I started with a bubble column up, and then I needed to get all of the eggs aligned so they'd be moving on the edge of the hoppers. Otherwise, they'd either get stuck in the holes or not have enough momentum to clear the gaps between the water. So that's what these turns are for. With the water elevator complete and capped off, the moment I had been preparing for 90 days had finally arrived. All I had to do was flick open the gate. All I could do was watch as all of my planning and preparation came to life right in front of me. If I had done everything right, I would smash the 10 million egg goal with 4 days to spare. But if just one number in my calculations was off, well, only time would tell. It wasn't until day 96 that some of the rows were completely filled up. Day after day, I watched the eggs disappear into hoppers, and pretty much just passed the time by AFKing. Until the night of day 99. To keep things accurate, I decided I would close the gate as soon as day 100 hit, since the challenge had started on day 0, which should mean exactly 100 days had passed. So as the sun rose on day 100 and the counter updated, I closed the gate. Whatever was still running through the system was fair game, and I also blocked off one of the water sources just to further prove that no more eggs were getting in. Then began the counting process. Doing it in survival would have literally taken me days, so I switched over to creative mode with a fully wiped statistics page. At first, I was just going through manually deleting the eggs from my inventory, but then I remembered that switching to single player would automatically delete the items you pick up when your inventory is full, and that saved me a lot of time. It still took an hour and a half just to break all those chests and hoppers, but once I had collected every last egg, I opened up my statistics page, and the final count was... Yeah, I fell short. All of those chests behind me are completely empty, and let me tell you why. When I first designed the storage system, it was going to be 300 hoppers long, not 600. When I realized making it longer would store the eggs faster and buy me more time, I forgot to calculate how many more chickens I would need to actually keep up with those new speeds. In short, I thought I needed half as many chickens as I actually did. Please don't spoil it for anyone in the comments, and enjoy watching me eat my own words here. We failed this challenge, it's not because of chickens. And if I'm incorrect in that assumption, then I deserve to fail it anyway.